Hi Alex, my name's Corey, and I saw your video on YouTube about why you dislike the ending to Ender's Game. I'm a sports journalist, but I also, one of my hobbies is science fiction, and used to be a huge Star Wars fan, but now I'm really into Ender's Game. I read it summer before my freshman year of high school. I'm a junior in college now, but this is still probably my favorite book, and really the entire saga is my favorite books. After Ender's Game is Speaker for the Dead, and then Xenocide, and finally Children of the Mind, which I'm currently in the middle of reading for probably the third or fourth time. I've read all the other ones at least as many times as well. And I've also read all of the books in the Bean Quartet, beginning with Ender's Shadow, which is sort of a parallel novel to Ender's Game. They aren't the same story from different point of views, but they follow the exact same timeline, the exact same sequence of events, but Ender's Shadow is told from Bean's perspective. After that comes Shadow of the Hegemon, and then also Shadow Puppets and Shadow of the Giants, which I don't have with me right now, but I've read all of those 2 or 3 times each. And then there's also several other books. There's short stories, short books. There's a new prequel trilogy. The first one has already been released. It's titled Earth Unaware. The next one, which will be released, I believe, in March or April, is Earth Afire, and then there will be a third one which currently is untitled, and those tell the story of the first Bugger War. So anyway, on to your take on the ending. You said that you didn't like how sudden it was, how suddenly it ended, how all of a sudden the Formics are there, and then the next thing you know they're not there. You figure that he's gone through this training, and so now the next book or two are going to be about him fighting against the Formics. And you were disappointed that he finishes this final test, and all of a sudden Mazer Rackham comes out and says, "Oh, by the way, that was it. You just destroyed all the buggers, you've saved humanity, and that's it." And so now you're like, okay, well then what the heck are the next 3 books about? Well, first let me explain why the ending is what it was and why it had to be that way. You feel like you were robbed by Orson Scott Card, but in fact you weren't. You really weren't. Ender, as a child, has to be in some ways protected. He can't know the truth. He can't know that he's actually fighting the Formics during all of those command school tests, because he has too much compassion in him as a child. If he were to know, he would never be able to bring himself to actually kill the Formics. And you saw that when, after he learned the truth, he was so devastated. First it was confusion, but after that, all of a sudden he realized, wow, I just destroyed an entire species, and he felt remorse for it. And he continues to feel remorse throughout the other 3 books. So the next logical question that you would have is, well, why couldn't they have an adult do it then? Mazer Rackham is there, he's teaching him these things, why couldn't he do it? Well, Mazer was there as a guide, but the problem is that adults are closed-minded, or at least that's the theory that they're going off of. An adult isn't as creative as a child. He can't come up with the same ways to fight the Formics that a child like Ender can. So you have this conundrum where you can't have an adult, but at the same time a child's compassion would be too much to control. They wouldn't be able to actually bring themselves to destroy an entire species. So the only thing left is to have a child, but to lie to him and to tell him that this is just tests to find out if he's the right person to lead humanity in this fight. And it turned out that he was. But the thing is, it wasn't like that last final test was the only one where he's killing Formics. All of the other simulations in command school are separate fights against the Formics. Every single one. They get larger and larger as they get closer to the homeworld. But every single one is a battle between humans and Formics at a different world. Worlds which humans eventually go out and inhabit during the course of the next 3 novels. But that I really recommend that you go on and you read. I would read Ender's Shadow, because Bean is very, very intelligent, even more intelligent than maybe it lets on in Ender's Game, and he's very insightful. And throughout the book, you get, there's Bean's story. It's a whole different story than that of Ender, but you also get some insight into Ender and what Bean thinks of him, and that gives you a little bit of, as I said, insight into that. And then I would also read Speaker for the Dead, and that will most likely cause you to want to continue on to Xenocide and Children of the Mind. But definitely read Speaker of the Dead, or Speaker for the Dead, I'm sorry, because that continues where Ender's Game left off. And the cool thing about Speaker for the Dead is that it was actually written to be able to stand alone. You don't have to have read Ender's Game in order to understand what's going on in Speaker for the Dead. But obviously, if you've read Ender's Game, then some things you understand, and it almost gets a little bit irritating because it starts to explain things that happen in Ender's Game at times. But it's it's not so much that it drives you insane. But yeah, no. I saw your video, and it wasn't so much that it made it angry that you were misjudging it. It was more just that it's such a powerful series, such a powerful saga. It's one of the greatest science fiction works ever, in my opinion. Especially if you continue and read on. I mean, there's religion, philosophy, the science. Even though some of it is, very, very much fictional. There's so many different aspects to it that somehow Orson Scott Card makes work into one story. And I would hate for it to, to lose a mind like yours just because you were a little bit disappointed over the ending of one book. In my opinion, unfairly so. So that's all I really have to say. I hope that you understand everything I'm saying, and I'm sorry that this ran a little bit long. I tend to ramble like you when I don't script these things. But hopefully you'll continue and read some of these other books in the saga, because they really are fantastic books, and I think that as you read them, you'll understand better why Orson Scott Card wrote them the way they are, and why they really wouldn't work as very well in any other way. So, thanks.